everyone. You are all welcome to this unique capacity development program with the theme Fundamentals of Quality Assurance in Learning. For certain, it's going to be a worthwhile program. We are having seasoned actually present all the papers we're having. As we're told, we'll be having like 3 papers today. Then the last one will be taken tomorrow. The first paper today will be taken by Michael Gard. He's there already. He's very much ready. Michael Gard is a seasoned international facilitator based in the United Kingdom. He is the director of qualification and training programs in the United Kingdom. And currently, he is a senior consultant with GAD Education in the United Kingdom. Interestingly, we are not in the United Kingdom now, but because he has been facilitating a lot of training programs in the United Kingdom. But thank God for WAMDEVIN for bringing him on board today to train us. And I know for certain we are all going to enjoy him. So I want to enjoin us that we should be with our writing materials as he will be taking us through the first paper titled General Principle of Quality Assurance. Remember to mute your system. Thank you very much. Mr. Michael Gard, I know you are very much ready. Yes, you can start up now.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So, yes, as the doctor has highlighted, my name is Michael Gard, and I've been in education now for nearly 20 years. So in that time, I've had various roles. So I started off as a head of English literature, assistant principal, as has been said already, actually. I then moved into working in an education technology company, which was listed as one of the world's top 25 startup companies by Alibaba in China. Lucky enough to work out there with various different universities and governments. Been working in the UAE as well to support institutions there. And as part of that role, I've been lucky enough to develop courses with UK-based universities, and as well as that, helping many kind of charities and groups internationally. Currently, I'm also now one of the lead education figures for a number of local governments within the UK, and that still comprises my ability to obviously develop and create courses and work with people who, in the main, wish to become teachers. We've worked on a number of different courses as well. So I'm really pleased to be here today because there's a lot of experience in this room, a lot of understanding, a lot of knowledge. And what I am here to do today is to help us to reflect on that knowledge, to hopefully give you some food for thought in relation to ideas of general principles of assurance and the training cycle as well. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, so you can obviously see my presentation, and I'll just move this out of the way for everybody as well. So thank you very much indeed. So thank you very much. Apologies for the slight delay there. So as I said already, our focus today is going to be looking at those general principles of quality assurance. And I know we have various different talks and conversations today in relation to quality assurance and the processes in some detail. So I'm not going to be taking anyone's thunder there, but I am also going to be talking about the training cycle in more detail. And that's our aim really today, is those twofold things. As I said already, I want us to come away with an ability to discuss and understand what high quality courses look like, how they're structured, how they could be delivered. And again, I appreciate we have a lot of experience in this room, so I'm not going to pretend to know everything. I'm not going to pretend to know your individual learners as well as you do. As I said, the idea here is that we're going to pause and reflect and really think about what we do and why we do it that way. And we're also going to be analysing what elements we should be including and thinking about when considering and creating courses as well. So I think first and foremost it's important for us. We're talking about quality assurance as one of our main themes over these 2 days. But what actually is quality assurance? Well, obviously, as the name suggests, it ensures the quality of our college, school, centre, business, however you brand yourself. And the whole point of this is that you are developing something, delivering something, so that you are able to create the highest standard of course, but more importantly, the highest standard of candidate. Because ultimately, what are we doing this for? We are doing this to ensure that our learners, our students, our customers, however you refer to the people you work with and for, are at the highest possible standard, because obviously they are training to either improve their ability to undertake roles in the workforce, to add value to your local community, and obviously then to improve the standards. And what you deliver is a model to others. So obviously, if the work and the courses and the programs you deliver are modeling the highest possible standards, well, then obviously others will mirror that in their institutions, in their place of work every single day. And secondly, as we can see here, that actually quality assurance is a management tool. It allows us to diagnose the strengths and areas of further development within our organization. And again, if you are familiar and understand those quality assurance purposes and the ways in which they're undertaken, then that will ensure that your centre, that your college, your institution will be strong, robust, and obviously therefore means that your reputation as an extension of that will be strong and robust, and means that people are likely to come to you for their courses, for their learning as a result of that. So with those things in mind, something for us to consider here as well then is the principles that we relate to quality assurance. And I think it's also, whilst we're here for a second, it's also important because it ensures, if these things are in place, and we'll talk about them in a second, it ensures that the progress of our learners will be visible and trackable. It ensures that there is an improved efficiency in the way you work, and actually it improves the quality of your leaders in your organization. So quality assurance isn't something that we need to do. We shouldn't think of it as something we need to do because an awarding body or an overseeing institution that might observe us simply want us to jump through hoops. We shouldn't see it as an activity to jump through hoops to get what we need. We should see quality assurance as a way of improving our standards and processes, which will make us more efficient, make our learners more effective, and make our teachers, the people who are delivering our courses, the people who represent you and your organization every time they stand in front of a group of learners, whether that's online, whether that's face-to-face. Quality assurance will ensure that they have. It's also important to understand that in other areas internationally, for example, in the UAE, you are unable in certain levels of education to progress in your career unless you have qualified as an IQA, internal quality assurance, which we'll look at later, and or an EQA, external quality assurance. So it's important to state here that this isn't just a nice idea. This isn't just something that's just a nice thing to do to improve the quality of your work. Internationally, it is recognized as something that is imperative to the quality of the courses that we deliver. And finally, it obviously proves that what you're doing is valid, because of course, quality assurance is checking that you are delivering courses set by maybe national frameworks, international guidelines. So it proves that what you're doing is right. However, something for us to bear in mind here, quality assurance is a guide and it highlights a number of things that you need to do. So every course you deliver, will have certain guidelines, certain frameworks. Now, the danger is that we only go by those guidelines. And the danger is that it can mean that our IQA process narrows our curriculum. It narrows what we do. So don't be afraid to ensure that what you're developing is right for your learners, but obviously make sure the course, it fits the requirements of the standard that you need to meet. So the principles of quality assurance here are that obviously it's process orientated. There'll be a number of processes, a number of procedures that you will need to put in place to ensure that quality is there. Quality assurance is also about prevention. There is nothing worse than an organization that is not validating, checking on the progress of its staff, its course, and its learners. Because what will happen is if you don't do this, you'll get to the end of a course and your learners haven't done the right thing because your staff member hasn't delivered the right things. And it might mean that you can't certify that learner as qualified. Now, that has massive implications for your reputation, has massive implications for that individual who has probably paid their own money to undertake this course. And ultimately, when we talk about reputation, well, it could be ruined. But importantly here as well, when we think about what we're trying to achieve, now all of us here with an education hat on should be designing courses because we want the best for our learners. We want the best for our community. So by making sure these processes are in place, we are preventing danger happening and we are ensuring in a proactive way, the quality is there. As I said already, it's a tool to support your management. So without talking too much about this, because I know we'll be speaking about this in our next papers, but as a management tool, simply observing someone delivering some of the sessions, observing and reviewing some of the work and marking people are doing, talking to your learners, it gives you information, it gives you ideas that you can go away with and reflect to improve the way in which courses are developed and are delivered as well. And finally, quality assurance is everyone's responsibility. So you may have in your organization already someone who delivers internal quality assurance, someone who monitors and moderates certain courses, but actually it's up to all of us, because ultimately when we work for your organization, we represent your organization. And if one person isn't delivering things in a way that meets that quality assured standards, well, it's going to impact on the way our organization is represented. But again, those are some of the things that we are reflecting on now, but they'll be explored a little bit later on as well. The second main area that I want to think about here is quality assurance is important when we are developing our courses, developing our training and our programs. And many of us will be familiar with this, which is the training cycle, which is the second part of what we're focusing on today. Now, actually, this training cycle, for those of you who are interested, around the 1970s, there were lots of different researchers and professors who were looking at the way in which we break down training and how training can be delivered effectively. And actually, what we see here in our cycle came from the 1970s from an individual called Boydell, who introduced what's called the systematic training in 10 steps. But obviously, as you can see here, that concept was adapted by Buckley and Capel in 1995 and then revised in 2009 into what we now know as the training cycle. And obviously we can read and we consider there are four main stages here. Obviously one being our identifying the learning needs, then we move on to design the training, deliver that training and evaluate that training. And it happens in a constant cycle. We're constantly as learners, we're constantly as course leaders, program leaders, developing those programs as well. And what I'm going to ask you to do today with me, please, is I want you, whilst we're going through these stages, and we're going to look at what we need to keep in mind for each of them, I want you to have in mind a course you may be thinking of developing. I want you to have in mind a course program that you have already run. And I want us to reflect today on whether you feel that your programs met some of the things that we're talking about. Did you undertake some of these processes? And it might be did all of these more, which is fantastic. It might be you looking at this and you think, I don't know. I don't know if we did stage 1 as well as we could have done. I don't know how well we're evaluating our training. And if you don't know the answers, then it's good that you're here, because obviously it highlights you're looking to develop that part of your program. And now I may be asking some of you to contribute with some ideas in regards to your own programs. But as I said, keep in mind now that I want you to reflect on programs you're thinking of developing, are currently undertaking, or have developed as well, because we're going to be using this cycle now to consider each of our stages. So stage 1 is obviously the identification of learners' needs. Now, this is obviously really important because learners in London and the UK, or in Abbey, or maybe delivering from today, so who are they? What is their background? What do they want? What do they need? And that is an important research question for you. Who are they actually, your learners? So what does a learner actually want to learn? How do they know? How do they learn best? Now, the way in which you will be able to identify this is by research. So, of course, what we can do here in terms of research is, 1, you may have current learners that you are able to question, to survey. You may have learners in this position where you can ask them about what their hopes and aspirations are, why they want to do this particular course. If they could choose a course from this selection, what would they be undertaking and why? You might actually be directed by higher bodies, higher government bodies, who perhaps have said, right, we need more development in these areas, and that will be important as well. You also want to make sure you consider in part of this their background. So what is your learner's background? Gender does matter, but experience and salary is also really important, because you may be working with learners for this course who, for example, might not have very strong literacy, and that's something to consider. You might be working with learners on a particular course who are extremely busy, they have a high level role, and they're looking to complete training in a time that also fits within their workload. So that will also help you to understand the way in which to develop that course. But you also want to identify with them the ways they learn best. So again, you might be a training center, an organization that delivers only face-to-face training. You might be an organization that delivers only online training. You might use a blended approach, which is both. But again, knowing how your learners learn best is going to be a key way to ensure that what you develop has that information in mind, because the danger is you can create a course which you think is right, but actually doesn't fit the profile of the learners you're working with. So careful research, knowing your learners, who are your learners and what do they know, was something I was taught when I was trained to be a teacher, is important, because if you have that in your mind, everything that you develop will therefore be better suited, better tailored to them as well. So those are all key things to remember and consider. And again, if you have current learners, go back to them, use them, because obviously they're going to be key to help you with that. The second stage of this cycle, as we've been talking about already, is the design and the designing of the training. Now, obviously, highly important because this will be the thing that you deliver. This will be the thing that obviously people see and know of you. So again, there are some key things for us to consider here. So first and foremost, as we mentioned already as part of the quality assurance process, what are the course requirements and criteria? Now, you may be developing a course wherein there are no requirements from a higher educational body or organization. You're creating something which you think is right for your learners, and that's great. But if you are creating a course which has specific criteria, it's really important that you understand that. So for my learners to pass this course, to achieve this qualification, what do they need to do? So for example, is it going to be terminal exam based? Are you going to have formal assessments at the end of the program? If so, the way you design the training will need to ensure that you've used things such as Bloom's taxonomy of learning. You need to make sure that you've used interleaving as part of a revision program to support them. Practice exams, etc., will all need to be part of that program. If the course is essentially coursework based, so they need to produce a number of assignments, a number of essays as part of the course, well, then that will be very, very different, because obviously with no exams, it will develop in a very, very different way. It might be that the competencies and requirements are practical based. They need to be observed doing certain things. So again, you'll need practice observations. You need to make sure that they are comfortable and familiar with being observed, with taking feedback and criticism, because for some, taking criticism, taking feedback, positive and negative, can be very, very difficult for them. And again, you can hear how understanding what you need to do is going to be really important when it comes to designing the course as well. Secondly, I've come here, should be at the top of this list once again, but the learners. So once more, keep the learners in your mind. Because obviously if you keep your learners in your mind, the design of the course will mirror their requirements and what they need. So using that research, as said already, are they highly literate individuals where you can really push their academic understanding? Are they individuals where their literacy might not be as strong? Are they individuals who have not been in education for a number of years? And therefore in your program, part of your course requirement, which might not be written down and prescribed to you, but part of your course requirement could be to include study skills. It could be something that you offer as a side project to the program. But again, knowing how strong your learners are through initial assessment. So do you assess those learners? How do you know what they are like at the start of the program? Or do you simply just enroll them and find out at some point? It's really important to understand their strengths so that you can obviously develop the course in the right way. As you said already, timeframes are obviously going to be key to this. You might have a time frame in mind. Your learners might have a time frame in mind. Your course providers, so again, awarding organizations, might have recommended number of hours per course. You might have certain examinations which had to be completed by a certain date. So with those things in mind, they will dictate the length of your program. And you then have to make sure that your course reflects that. So quite often when I'm delivering programs, I obviously work backwards. So I'll identify what the outcome needs to be, what is the criteria to achieve full marks in this qualification, this program, and then make sure that what I'm designing goes backwards to make sure that we've demonstrated all those things as well. Budgets are important. Now, budgets can be your own. So it could be, as we've talked about in previous actual training together, we can talk about how you will deliver something. So for example, are you going to be using online content? And is that going to be professionally created videos, which can cost quite a bit of money? Is it going to be the hiring of a center? Do you own a center? Do you rent a center? And again, those things will need to be considered because they may well impact on the course cost to the learner. And again, if we know our learners are earning a lower income, then we need to make sure that we're considering that as a key way in which we design the program as well. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's not just what the actual course itself is, it's all those other factors to consider as well. The actual physical space, the domain in which you are delivering your training. So as I said, we're delivering training now. This is one particular way of delivering training. It's not particularly a high cost way of doing it. Again, it's one way in which we can consider bringing in people You know, I've not had to, although obviously I'm very happy to fly in to deliver face to face. But of course, this is a great way that we can all be part of this training in all our various different geographic locations and still make the most of that at a low cost way. Also, what's important, and I think sometimes we don't consider this as we could when we are really designing programs, is the customer journey, the learner journey. And let me give you a business example here. So I think people are familiar with American Airlines or Virgin Atlantic, and these are two airline companies. And when they're designing an experience, they think about the entire journey. So they, for example, would say, right, who is our customer? And in this example, these were first class customers. And they were thinking, okay, how can we provide a first class plus experience? And they thought about plotting the pain points for their customer. And in our example, the learner. So for example, one pain point is getting up in the morning and making it to the airport. That can be a process which can be quite stressful, can take time. So what they said was, okay, we've identified a pain point here. As part of this first class journey, we'll arrange for a driver to pick them up. Pain point gone. The next pain point they talked about was getting to passport control and things like that, which can be lengthy delays, even in first class. Okay, so what we'll do for our customer journey is we will fast track them. We'll arrange for them to go and bypass the queues. And you can hear that they've identified pain points and obviously then thought about how they can design their product, our course, our program, to benefit them. So for example, with our training, one of your pain points could be how they register with you, how they find you in the first place. So does that mean that you've now got an online presence? How do you advertise yourself? Another pain point could be potentially the way they pay for the course. Well, how can we think about that pain point? Another pain point could be the way they access your materials. So for some, it could be that the distance is too far or the time is too late. So how can we design our program to eliminate that pain point for people? Do we have an online portal, for example, in which we can provide the materials, deliver face-to-face training, et cetera, So that's important to remember. So you can hear we're talking about a whole journey, not just these are my lessons, these are the assignments, let's do that. Another thing to consider, again, I've mentioned this already, is the idea of the test, evaluate and redraft. And that's not the learners, that's you. So before you let your learners undertake the program, how do you test it? Do you sit down with your different course leaders, your managers, and go, right, talk me through this program. Talk me through how that you're going to deliver this. Okay, when we get to the observation part of this program, how are you going to do it? When we get to, for example, the assessment part, how do we ensure that there's no plagiarism? What are our processes? And that you can hear the questions we're evaluating. Is this going to work as effectively? What do you think? So having more than one set of eyes looking at a program is obviously going to be a way in which you can ensure the highest quality of what you're designing. And again, based on those conversations, redraft. So we're never going to create something perfect the first time round. Anyone who's ever written a novel, a script, a screenplay will know that things are always adapted multiple times, and be prepared for that. And as part of that, obviously, we have our delivery methods. So as I mentioned already to all of you, are you going to be delivering it face-to-face? What's the cost of that? Who are you going to get in to deliver it? Are they the right person to do that for you? Do they need training to ensure they can deliver the program to the level that you want? Is it going to be blended? Is it going to be online? Are you going to be doing sessions live? Are you going to be recording them and then putting them on your site for people to access afterwards? All key things to remember. And the delivery methods will also need you to consider budgets, timeframes, all those things as well. As I mentioned already, staff training is going to be key, because the person who designed the course isn't always going to be the person delivering the course. You can have multiple people delivering that training. So how do you ensure the quality is there? And you can hear quality assurance is what we're talking about here. How do you know that your staff, your trainers, your facilitators are going to be delivering the course to the highest possible standard before you begin the course? And obviously that could be you hiring experienced individuals, people you've worked with previously that you know and trust. All those things are obviously important, but these are all key areas and key things for you to design. As I said already, I asked you a moment ago to think about courses that you're thinking of designing, courses that you're in the middle of delivering, or courses that you have delivered recently. And just reflect for a second. I'm not asking anyone to tell me now. This could be part of our Q&A afterwards. But how many of those things did you consider? What were your strengths? When you evaluate that process of design, what aspects of that design on reflection could you have developed further? Did a problem arise during the course which you could have identified in a design phase? So again, that's obviously going to be really important for you to consider. Thirdly, penultimately here, we're at our delivery stage. And again, this is something that we are all very, very comfortable with, something that we all obviously really understand. But as we mentioned, how will that training be delivered? And this is really, really key, isn't it? So I'm not just talking now about face-to-face, online, in group breakout spaces, one-to-ones. I'm also thinking about the combination of self-study. So for example, how much of your course will be delivered face-to-face? How much of that will be the learner, the candidate, the customer going away and doing this work on their own? And again, knowing your learner, do you need to include elements of training to help them to be able to self-study? Because obviously, if we don't model, if we don't demonstrate how we want our learners to learn, they will then not produce the standard of work that you're looking for them to produce. So that's really key. Again, remembering our learners, what are their strengths? What are their areas of weakness? Because if you ask them to write an essay, for example, a paper, and they've never done it before, then unless you model and show them the standard that you need them to achieve, they won't achieve it. Well, it's very unlikely they will achieve it. We come back to the second part here as well. So the strengths of your trainers, really key. They are the face-to-face. They represent your organization every single time they interact with a learner, every resource they produce that a learner accesses. So it's key that you hire the right people and that you develop those people. Because obviously, if you're developing them in the way that you know is best for your learners and the way that you pedagogically want learning to take place, well, then they represent you and your organization. And obviously, if the reputation and the satisfaction is strong as a result, your organization is strong as a result. So you are only as good as the people who are delivering your training and your courses. And how do you know their strengths? And that will come back to some of our later papers that we're going to be listening to in due course. But how do you quality assure? How do you internally quality assure the standard of delivery, the standard of assessment, the standard of questioning? These things are all key. How do you do it? How do you know? If I was to ask any one of you in a moment to prove the standard of your trainers, could you do it? Where's the paperwork? Where's the evidence? And that's all part of not only quality assurance, but that's part of being a strong organization. How do you know that the people that you have hired to represent you, to develop the people in your community, how do you know they're good enough? How do you know that they don't need support? Linked with that, obviously, is assessment and feedback. It's absolutely key. Now, there was a study within the UK by a research group called the Education Endowment Fund. And what they look at is levels of progression. So look at various different initiatives, techniques, and they rate the number of months progression that can take place based on that technique. So for example, in the UK, they have, schools will have teaching assistants. So someone who is hired to work alongside a teacher to support learners. That research found that within an academic year, a good teaching assistant can add 3 months worth of learning to an individual, but for a relatively high cost. Assessment and feedback, so quality feedback, can add 8 months of learning in an academic year, which is only 9 to 10 months long and is free, apart from maybe some minor training. So the Education Endowment Fund have highlighted that the number one way to achieve rapid progress for learners in a way which is essentially free is the quality of assessment, but the quality of feedback and questioning. So that is absolutely vital to the success your learners will achieve. So again, how strong are your teachers, your facilitators, your lecturers when it comes to questioning? How strong are they when it comes to delivering feedback to learners? Can learners take that feedback and progress? Can you prove that they have taken that feedback and developed as a result? So it's absolutely key, because again, if you're looking to meet a certain level of criteria to pass a course, the only way you can do that is through assessment, whether that's observations, written, various different types, but the feedback you get is key. And finally, I would say that don't be afraid to alter the way you deliver the training during the course. So if you are doing the things that we're suggesting here, if you are checking the quality of the delivery, if you are checking with learners how they feel about their progression, if something isn't quite right, don't be afraid to change it. And the best teachers, the best lecturers, the best facilitators are always those ones that understand their learners. They can read the room. So for example, they can tell just by the way someone walks in that it's going to be harder for them to engage today. It's going to be harder for them to develop an understanding. So a good facilitator, lecturer, teacher will change the way they deliver on the spot maybe, but also they might go away and think, okay, the next session, I know that based on what we did today, I need to revise how we do this. So obviously, if that's the case, then don't be afraid to change it. Obviously, get advice, seek guidance if that's needed, but this is where the quality, the strength for your trainer is so important. Because if you've got someone who doesn't have confidence in their ability, isn't strong as a deliverer of your training, then what they tend to do is just read PowerPoints and resources like a script. And that's really obvious to the learners, because then when they start asking questions to expand their understanding, a lower quality trainer will say, I'm not sure, well, let me find out. Or I don't know, can we just move on, please? Now, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm not sure, let me find out, because we don't know everything. But if your learners lack faith in their lecturer, they'll lack faith in the organization, and they'll soon begin to disengage. They won't get as much out of it as they possibly can. And obviously, within our timeframes, we're trying to ensure that we deliver quality training to create quality learners. That's what we're looking to do. And the final part of that cycle is the evaluation. So again, this can happen throughout the program, okay? And it is, as we've said already, a key way to measure the effectiveness of that program. How do you know that what you've delivered is strong if you don't evaluate in various ways? And again, there are a number of ways that you can evaluate the way in which you support your learners. And again, Some of those may include, as we mentioned already, the idea of the IQA process. So you might have observed individuals delivering sessions. You might have done a moderation whereby you look at the work that's produced and you sit together, maybe a number of you in a staff body, and look at the outcome of the work. How strong has it been? And this process could be at a number of different stages along the program. And obviously it should be, because there's no point in evaluating what the learners are producing at the end, because you've got no time to make corrections. What you need to be doing is evaluating throughout. So it might be that you simply drop in, say hello to people, and just sit in the back of the room or walk around and communicate with your learners for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then you start to get a sample and understanding of the feel of the course. Does it feel like it's going well? When you look at what people are producing, does it look like they're on track? Obviously, you need to know those things as well. Again, another method that you might need to use is surveys of your learners. They're key. You know, they're a key stakeholder, aren't they? They're the people that are going to tell other people to do that course with you. Why should they go to you and not someone else? And again, how do you know they feel that way without evaluating their experience, their journey? Now, what's key to think about here is that evaluation isn't necessarily a measure of the learning undertaken. So we're not necessarily talking about what was learnt. What we're talking about here potentially is how it was taught. So you're not just evaluating what people produce. It's not evaluation by outcome. It could also just be an evaluation of your processes. So go to your staff. There might be particular elements of your courses, and they might say, this bit didn't work. This bit hasn't worked, or but not necessarily the way that I want. And finally, with that as well, evaluation is a process that you constantly repeat. Now, there are some courses that we as educators will have delivered every year for many, many years, many, many years. And whilst the spine of what you deliver over those years is likely to stay relatively the same, the learners are different. The technology is different. Some of the requirements that you need to meet might be different. So just because you've designed something and when it was evaluated was received extremely well, doesn't mean that obviously it will remain a strong course. So that process of repeating the cycle is going to be vital. So hopefully today, what we've done here is we have thought about and reflected, and this was a key thing here for us today. What I'm doing in our talk today is offering up some reflection points, offering up an opportunity for us as leaders to consider what we've done. Are we doing things in the way that we feel they should? Can we prove it? And then hopefully you'll be going over some ideas today to ensure that you can strengthen the offer to your learners as well. So I want to thank you very, very much for allowing me to offer some insight and hopefully some thoughts on the topic. And I'm very happy now to answer any questions or to open a discussion about the way in which we quality